Check 1, 2.
Curious about real estate?
Yes!
Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need, get over the fear, and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, everybody. Michael Quarles with podcast number 173. Today's exciting. It's like Christmas Eve's Eve. So in a day or so, a lot of us are going to be opening up some gifts from those that care about us and love us. And we're going to see the excitement of people opening up gifts from us. Kind of a cool time of year. Remember, next year and all those New Year's resolutions, we're going to start setting some goals. Don't set your goals in a negative fashion. Don't say you're going to lose weight. Quit this, stop that. Just say whatever your goal is, whatever your intention is, write that down. So if it's, I want to be 170 pounds, which is the equivalent of losing weight, just say you want to be 170 pounds. You'll know what that is. It just won't be a negative mind. It won't be a negative comment for yourself. Anytime we start thinking negatively about ourselves, guess what? We start believing it, and we don't want to do that. In fact, if you can believe you're positive on a daily basis, minute by minute, moment by moment, you're going to be better off in life. Today we have a scenario question, and I am going to try my best to answer it. So here we go. I am in a situation where my deal can close at any moment, but my private lender is getting cold feet, and I want to order an appraisal, and they want me to order an appraisal, which could take 5 to 10 days. I've assured my private lender that the BPO is just as valid of an opinion unless we are seeking a standard loan. There are now 2 additional brokers who have concurred with the price of my BPO. So basically, I guess we have 3 BPOs, or 1 BPO with 2 other people agreed. My private lender's primary concern is that as this is a vacant land property, there could be unknown, unforeseen issues that a residential property broker would not see. What can I say or do to convince him that we have a very solid transaction and to move forward? Well, this is a great question, and I think sometimes greed can get in the mix or start presenting itself. And sometimes that greed presents itself because we overshare information. So we share too much with our private lender. Like, I'm going to make $75,000 if you give me the money to buy the deal. And oh, by the way, I'm only going to give you $3,000 for your money. Well, it would be reasonable for that lender's selfishness to get involved. I mean, they would want to make more money. Now, if we didn't let them know what the deal was for us, the big upside for us, the $3,000 in interest or fees or whatever they're charging you. I don't know what they're charging you, but let's just assume it's $3,000. And, for the short period of time that you're receiving that is much greater than they could earn off their money anywhere else they were utilizing it or storing it or whatever they're doing with it. In most occasions, unless if they're investors of some sort, stock market, real estate, what have you, there are places for them to put their money, but most people that have money sitting around aren't those kinds of people. So, the 3 or 4 or whatever percent or 2% or 1%, whatever they're earning on their money is nominal or minimal in comparison to what you can present them with the opportunity of earning. However, when we share too much information, sometimes people get greedy. The other thing is one of the issues that we always have is don't get so strapped to a deal that we have to make it work. So, if your lender doesn't perform, your lender doesn't perform. Don't have that your only backup option. And I know, I'm going to raise my hand on this one as well. It's easy for us to place ourselves there, but let's try not to. And ultimately, if a deal isn't emotional to us, meaning, okay, if I get the lender, great. If I don't get the lender, that's okay too. I have another one to go do, or I have another lender. So either I have another deal to do or another lender that will do this deal. And so that's taking the emotion out of it, because if we only have this single deal to do or this single lender that will help me do the deal, then I'm emotionally attached to, I have to make this thing work. Well, I would challenge you to make sure that you have backup on both sets of that. So either backup on the lender and or backup on the deal. And those of you who have started out and you only had a limited amount of deals to do, and every time you did a deal, it was so much emotion that, man, you had to make it work because you saw the big payday at the end of the day. You know what I'm talking about. But as soon as you transitioned into, well, I have so many deals, one falling out, one going away, isn't going to impact my life as tremendously as if it were the only deal, it's easier to do deals. I mean, when you don't have to make decisions based upon money, the decisions tend to be a little bit better. Now, what should you say to your private person who is getting cold feet or wanting to have more information to place a more emotional security on their money? I think you just have to be honest. And it's okay to do a takeaway. Like, hey, it's okay if you don't want to loan me the money. It's all right. If you don't feel comfortable, it's okay. And sometimes that's all you'll need to say is, hey, I don't need it as badly as you think I do. I'm not, present yourself that you're not going to jump through the hoops or their hoops, even though their hoop is probably reasonable for them. It's not unreasonable. They're not being unreasonable in their opinion, and understand that. It's just present them with the concept and the idea that, hey, I appreciate you trying to help me, but if you don't help me, that's okay too. I don't want you to do something that you're uncomfortable doing. I don't want to place you in that position. And I certainly don't want you to place yourself in that position. So if you can't do the deal or don't want to do the deal, that's fine. Now, with that said, personally, I have done everything I can do to satisfy for myself, because I think at the end of the day, I am the one that's buying the property. I am the one that has to sacrifice and do what I've obligated myself to do. And I'm comfortable in the deal. So I'm not doing this deal emotionally. Which is why I have the BPO. Most investors don't do that or don't take that step. And I think all of us should. It's $150 at the most to get a BPO done. And in your case, congratulations, you actually had reinforcement. Whether that's a paid reinforcement or that's an opinion reinforcement, either of those are okay because you have the primary enforcement, which is, hey, we have an opinion here. Now, would it have been okay to get that appraisal in advance of getting the private money? Probably so. I actually know a little bit more about this situation in the question, so I know there wasn't that time element involved that we could utilize. And in this state where this property is, appraisals have a tendency of dragging out. And so even the 5 or 10 days, I think, is a quick appraisal for this state, this area. And I also know that the value of this property is such that I probably wouldn't have afforded an appraisal, meaning I would weigh the cost of my appraisal against the cost of the property and really have some big doubt of whether or not I wanted to spend the percentage of cost that the appraisal is against the value of the property. So, it's like if I'm buying a property for 100 cents, but the appraisal cost me 50 cents, I can't justify spending the 50 cents to earn the other 50 cents. And although we're not close to those kinds of numbers, that's an example as trying to express what I mean by the appraisal value, or the cost of the appraisal is so large as a percentage to the value of the property that you're paying it for that I probably wouldn't have got the appraisal. I applaud you. I praise you for getting the BPO and then those 2 backup opinions. I think most investors, one, won't get the BPO because they're kind of afraid. Sometimes people are afraid of the good news or the bad news. Well, it's reality. It's our check and balance system. But getting the 2 backup is great. Then the other concern is a residential single family realtor or broker or price opinion, is that opinion, does it have enough credibility? Does it have enough experience behind it? Because let's face it, a single family house, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage is different than a vacant land or a vacant property. And is the BPO agent qualified to actually do a BPO on vacant land? And the simple answer to that is who knows, right? Because when when we order a BPO, we're telling them what we have a BPO to be done, what kind of property we have and what we need. We're not guiding them to value, because that would be a shame on us, because we never want to tell an appraiser or BPO person, we want it to come in at this value, because what we're trying to accomplish here in our BPO and our appraisal at this stage is to determine what we don't know or justify or confirm what we do know. So if we went in and said, hey, I need a BPO at $100,000, and ask someone to fight for that value, then we're really doing ourselves a disservice. So when we present the opportunity for a BPO agent to do their BPO, and we tell them it's a single, it's a vacant lot or a single family residence or multifamily or commercial or industrial, whatever it is that we're looking at, we have to assume that they're professional enough and would say to us, I can't do that. I'm not qualified to do that. And most BPO agents, because of the requirement of the BPO itself, most agents would want to come clean on that, because it would be too much work for them to try to justify a BPO if they in fact weren't qualified to figure out how to justify that BPO. So if they didn't know where to get their comps, if they didn't know how to price or do the subtractions and the additions, then it would be too difficult. I mean, the $150 that you're paying, when you pay it to a service, the agent's probably only getting half of that. So for the $75 that they're getting, it would consume too much of their time for the reward for them. And so they would just say, hey, I can't do that. It's not inside my scope of service. So I think we can rely on that. And then again, you had 2 additional brokers, which I appraise you and applaud you for that. So one of those people would have said, if they weren't qualified, hey, I'm not qualified, or if they were super, super qualified, they would tell you that too. And if you got it through 3 opinions and your price point is still something that you want to fall forward on, then I think you're in good shape. And I think I'd relay that to my lender. I can critique this thing to death, private lender. I can justify it forever. However, at some point, we have to be comfortable in those systemization and the systems that we have implemented to give us back something that now I, as a person, can ask you to fund. Because I wouldn't ask you to fund it unless it went through the qualification process that I have set forth for myself in my business. And if I'm willing to borrow your money, now I happen to know that the amount of money that they would be loaning on this one is so ridiculously low in comparison to the value of the property that there shouldn't even be any consideration of if there's an issue or not. However, I do understand that private lenders sometimes they start really microing out everything on a private loan. Well, shame on them, because their job is not to do that. Their job is to confirm that they have a secured loan, and that's it. So the collateral that they're going to use to secure their loan is sufficient for them. In most cases, when we're buying at 60 cents or 65 cents, and this one is so much lower than that, it's ridiculous. But in the cases where we're buying 60, 65 cents on the dollar, and even if we're going to get a full LTV, loan to value, of our purchase price, the lender should be satisfied with that, totally satisfied with that. And then when they start nickeling and diming, your situation and ask you for more documents, get rid of the lender, kick them to the street. Let them save their money at Bank of America and find one that's willing to participate with you in the way, in the fashion that you deem necessary and that fits inside of your system. But it goes back to my original statement was it's hard because we're so emotionally attached to a transaction. It's hard not to cater to the needs of someone that we need so greatly. So position yourself correctly in that. And I would just have a heart-to-heart with my lender. Now, if it's a friend lender, so it's a private friend, I'd have a bigger heart-to-heart than that. I'd really ask the question, do you trust me? Now, I know all of my friends can trust me. In fact, I'm not so certain I can trust all my friends. But when I decided to make them a friend, I've given them some leeway on that trust. So if they weren't my friend, I may scrutinize them a little bit more than once I've called them my friend. Now I'm going to open my arms up and give them hugs and love. And sometimes that hug and love is going to cost me money, and that's okay. I mean, friendship is expensive. Maybe it ought not to be, but it has a tendency of being expensive. So I would just have a heart-to-heart, do you trust me? And let them say yes. Because as soon as they say yes, we'll fall forward. So, okay, well then what's the concern? If they say no, you don't have a friend, okay? So you really don't have anybody anyway. So you can't lose what you don't have, so don't worry about it. Ask the question. When you ask the question, ask it honestly, sincerely. Don't beg. We're not in the begging business. We're in the house buying business. If we have to have that cardboard sign out and on front of our chest that says, I need to borrow money, shame on us. So be cognizant of that. And how do you convince? I think you convince your private lender that you're worthy by being professional and doing everything professionally. And that professionalism starts way before the idea of borrowing money begins. And some of us don't realize that our communication with people in our center of influence needs to be professional all the time unless we have that non-professional relationship. And, like I have some buddies that I can go out and, use cuss words and slang words and drink beer and all that kind of, and cut up with. And, if I asked them for $100,000, it's different than if I asked the normal friend that I wouldn't do a lot of this cutting up and having good times with. So I want to be professional. So if I make an appointment with someone, if I make a commitment to someone, I want to honor it, even if and way before I have no intention or have intention of asking them to be a private lender. So start your professionalism in the beginning with those folks that are around you in your center of influence. Be very, very careful again of emphasizing or even exaggerating sometimes your profit potential, because people get, they want to be part of that, and they start losing focus on how much money their money's actually earning. And so, have a nice talk with them, be professional, don't get emotional to the transaction, or don't have the transaction the only one that you have to do. And if you have to kick it, you have to kick it. Now, at the end of the day, let's assume for a second that everything I just said is a bunch of crap, and the lender is not, or the private lender is not going to fund unless he gets more meat in the game. We have to ask ourselves at some point what we stand for and what our business model is. And it doesn't feel good to deviate from that. But if your private lender comes to you and says, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, I'll fund your deal, but I want a third of the potential profit. So I no longer want points and interest. I want to be a JV partner and go that route. That's worth a third. Money's worth a third. It's not worth more than that. So the finding the deal, in my opinion, is always worth a third of the profit. Always. Doing the deal is always worth half. Funding the deal is always worth half. So when you have finding the deal is worth a third, and then you have the other 2/3 left over, each side gets a half of that, which is a third. I think that's reasonable. It's unreasonable for someone who's made a commitment to you and said to you, I will loan you money at 4% or 5% or 10 points or 18 points, whatever it is. It's unreasonable for them to deviate from their agreement based upon them finding out at the end of the day how much you're going to make. That's unreasonable. Yet it's human nature. I mean, that's who we are as human nature, from a human nature perspective. So if you get to the point where he or they won't fund the deal, then you've got to open up that door, because let's face it, 2/3 of something is better than nothing. And although, my ego, my pride, my frustration in this person would rear its head, I still know I can't negatively impact myself based upon my emotion. And so if I didn't go back to my lender and say, hey, I'll do the deal with you if you could do a third, if you want to take a third of the JV. If I didn't do that, then I was just harming myself. I wouldn't want to introduce that in the beginning, but at last recourse, I would introduce it. So, and again, I'm going to fall back to, if we have so much opportunity out there and we have so many private lending partners out there, that when one opportunity goes away, maybe we just go find someone else and do other deals. Anyway, I hope that all that makes sense. And you guys have a wonderful Christmas. Until next time, you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.